Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss games that I believe deserve modern ports. So at this point, there are tons of games where it's like, hey, remaster this, remake this, but there's also a buttload of games, and I think I did an old video where it's like games I wish would come back. It's kind of in the same vein, but at this point, it's, hey, I genuinely just want the game to come back. We can max it out at remaster. It doesn't have to be like a remake. Of course, most games have to have some slight updates since they're on a new console, but this is genuinely like, just give me this old game and just give me a modern port. There's so many games, once again, there's so many different random topics that end up kind of touching on the game preservation side of things, but there's tons of games where it's like, man, I missed that game. I wish that game would come back. I think other people should be able to see that game because maybe it was a one-off and it's not going to get a remaster or a remake. Let's just make it available. Let's just give it a modern port. So I actually have like a genuine list for this one because I was like, there are so many games. I just want to have a bunch to go through. So I'm going to kick this off as I try to every time and start with Resident Evil. And it's only because we actually have these two games and they just recently came out for PS Plus. And that's RE2 and 3. The original Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 are finally available on PS Plus. I think it's on the Essential or whatever, maybe wherever that PlayStation catalog thing is, that's where they are now. So we got Dino Crisis on there as a modern port, as well as Resident Evil 2 and 3. And it would be cool to have that in a different package where it's like, hey, you can buy these games, which you can get them on PC. I mentioned that quite a while ago. They've been on PC for a long time with GOG, so definitely check that out. And you can still get the mods and all that stuff for like the Seamless HD project and all of that. So if you're gonna do it on PC. Like you can't even buy it on PlayStation, honestly. They're just on there as modern ports. But get them on GOG, get them online, and then do like the Seamless HD. Just look into all that stuff. If you don't know what it's about, it makes the games look insanely amazing because people went in and did some really cool stuff. So check all that out. But it was nice to see that Resident Evil got some modern ports. It's not in the way that we thought. It's not even in the way that we want it, because as a Resident Evil fan, we've been saying forever, like, hey, just give us 1, 2, and 3 as a physical modern day collection and we'll buy it. But it's once again one of those weird things. Companies don't like money because remasters are fairly simple, and let's face it, at this point, nostalgia is kind of like the name of the game. But wanted to start there because we actually got that and it's very nice to have it. It would be nice if we could buy the game separately. It would also be nice if, for whatever insane reason, because of how the PlayStation Network works, I bought the games on my PS3, but I still would have to buy them again because you can't re-download them. It's weird. That's a whole system that I just don't understand. But technically speaking, we do have modern ports of those games. I would just say go with the PC versions because it's better. But going to a lot of games that we don't actually have, I'm going to kick things off with Madworld. I mentioned this a couple of times, I know, in a few videos, but if you never heard of Madworld, it's actually Platinum Games' first game. It came out like a few months before Bayonetta did, so it kind of got overshadowed by its little sister when you really think about it. But it stars Steve Bloom playing a gruff guy that kills a bunch of people. I know that sounds like something he would never do, but I promise you it's real. And I think it's great. It's a fantastic game. It's got a really cool style. It's like a black and white sort of manga. And then there's colors, I think yellow and red are the only two other colors that are in there because, of course, red is for blood and yellow is for points. So I love that game. I always thought it was crazy that it just never even got a chance to live again. I guess it just didn't sell enough, and Platinum was like, just leave it where it's at. It's on the Wii. It was just one of those rare mature games that popped up on the Wii and was just like, all right, here it is. And then that's kind of it. You can play it on emulators or you can find it online, I'm sure. But I always thought this game should come out on the Switch. Every game that was on the Wii can easily be transported over to the Switch. Like, just give it a modern port, just be like, boom, here you go. And sadly, I don't think it's popular enough for it to ever happen. But it's unfortunate because it was stuck on the Wii, and it's just one of those games where if you see games from the Wii emulated online, they shoot straight up to 4K. Even like straight up Wii games. I've seen it with Madworld, and I've seen it with No More Heroes. Where it's like, yeah, there were Wii games, but if you put them on something that allows them to just kind of run free and be as pure as they need to be, or as they can be, they'll jump straight up to 4K 60 frames. Like, they have the capability of doing that with those games, and it would be great to see them. And I think Madworld would do well. It's still a simple game. It's not like the craziest thing in the world, but I honestly believe if that game was more widespread, it would be more popular. I think it's a good enough game that it could actually pull that off, especially now, in the days of streaming and stuff. I mean, people would have quite a bit to say about that game if it actually did come out today, that's for sure. But I think it deserves a modern port. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I think it should happen. Sadly, I really don't think it'll ever happen, but it should. I think it's an underrated game that's definitely worth, if they did remaster it or something, you could drop it for like a solid $40-50. I think it would actually still be worth it. That's probably what it cost when it came out too. But I think it would still be worth it. Maybe add a couple, a little bit of extra features or something. It doesn't have the greatest replayability, but it's super fun to play when you first go through it. Like, it's really fun to me. So, Madworld. Right under that, No More Heroes. Now, this is an interesting one as well, because much like Resident Evil 2 and 3, we did have a moment where there were modern ports on the Switch. I know some people don't really like this company, but from time to time, limited run games does do something pretty amazing. And I mean, this was a couple years ago now. They did do No More Heroes 1 and 2. This was before 3 actually came out. They did No More Heroes 1 and 2 physically on the Switch. And it was really cool. It was very simple. It was just like, hey, here's a modern port, here's a simple update. You actually got like the full case. You got an actual manual. That was crazy in the year of our Lord, whenever that happened. You can check out a video on that. I did an unboxing. But it was cool. We got modern ports of No More Heroes 1 and 2, which are some of the greatest games that came out on the Wii. And it would be cool if we actually got modern updates that were kind of just publicly available. But technically, for a limited time only, we did get No More Heroes on the Switch. So we definitely got it, but I think it deserves to be a bit more widespread than just, what we ended up getting. I'm surprised, honestly, they didn't end up doing a collection for that game, considering, they're 2 consoles apart. When you go from No More Heroes 1 and 2, they skipped over the Wii U, and then when 3 finally comes out on the Switch, I was actually shocked that they didn't bother doing just, here's the No More Heroes collection. So that seems to be an interesting thing that Nintendo, I guess, if it's not first party, they don't really want to do collections and stuff like that, because aside from Bayonetta being, redone 100 million times, it's almost up there, hitting on Resident Evil 4 territory. It kind of just comes out and it's like, hey, you can buy it again if you want to, digitally and stuff like that. But it's surprising that they never did that for No More Heroes. I think it's very popular, and once again, something that was on the Wii that, kind of made its mark, but then is just seen as, not selling enough, or it's just underrated, or the company's moved on to other things that maybe made more money. Although I wouldn't say that's really the case with Suda51. They always have games like they come out, they're popular, and then they're kind of just there for that little moment in time, and then they disappear. Unfortunately, I think Suda51 has like great, crazy fun games. That's why I'm very excited for this next one, Dead Man. I'm looking forward to that because his games are just fun action games that are ridiculous. So looking forward to that. But No More Heroes, we had it for like a split second, limited run games, but it deserves a full-on modern port, and they need to do something with that third game. I don't know if it's better on PS5, but once again, I made a whole video about that. I never make videos discussing what's going on with games, but I was like, No More Heroes 3 hurt me so bad. I was like, I need to talk about this because I could not believe the garbage visuals that I was forced to suffer through with that game. That was ridiculous. Now, moving away from the Wii, we're getting into what I would consider like my PS2 era. I was thinking of like my old PS2 games. Sadly, they were stolen. It's been a thing. I've been thinking about them a lot lately, like just the random games that I used to have and just the weird one-off things that are just not going to be discussed. No one's talking about this game at all, and it's a real tragedy because the next game on my list is one you probably never even heard of, depending on how old you are. Hey, even if you're my age, you probably didn't hear of it because it's an insane game, and it's Jet Li's Rise to Honor. Jet Li had a video game, and it was a good game. Personally speaking, I thought it was a really fun game. It was one of those weird games where they were like, hey, you fight using the analog stick and like flicking it in different directions. It was like Skate before Skate came out, except, obviously it was a fighting game utilizing, Jet Li and his martial arts talents. And it was fun. From what I remember, I enjoyed it. I'm sure if I played it now, it would be like, okay, probably got some issues here and there. It was definitely weird, controlling it with the analog stick. I think it was kind of, I'd have to look at some old reviews. That would be fun to look back at for that game. But I think it was kind of like, this seems weird for a fighting game. I think that would be a lot more accepted these days. It's still rare that that's a thing, but there have been a couple games since then that have also done that. And like I said, Skate is like the number one. It's so funny to think that Skate is the game that I think of the most because that was the thing that changed Skate, where it was like, hey, you use the analog stick to do all your tricks and stuff, and it kind of makes it more like a fighting game, like input commands and stuff like that. So Jet Li's Rise to Honor, an old PS2 game that, once again, I'm sure most people either don't remember or didn't know even existed, but I love that game back in the day. And it's Jet Li in a martial arts game. I think it's the only one that he had, which is funny. Like every famous martial artist has had at least one. The only person that might be missing one is probably like Donnie Yen, and who knows, he might have a game out there somewhere that I'm not sure about. But Jet Li's Rise to Honor, it was a fun game on the PS2. The graphics were pretty decent. Everything I remember about that game was pretty fun. The graphics were pretty good. It was one of those games when it came out during that era of hey, these are the games that'll have a more realistic art style. So it's one of those. But I think from what, once again, this is memory based, or it's if you look at an old game and it's it still looks good, it's no, the remake of that game looks a million times better than the original version. But in my head, for the time, on PlayStation 2, Jet Li's Rise to Honor was a pretty decent looking game, and the action was definitely fun, and it was a classic story. I'm pretty sure somebody was kidnapped, or it was revenge. It was the martial arts story. Pick one of the three. It's one of those. But it was fun, and you kick people's butt, and then of course there's the random on rails gun segments where you're it would be you're on a cart or something, and then you're just shooting people. It's kind of a lot like the Stranglehold game by John Woo. It has similar elements, except it's mostly a hand-to-hand fighting game, and then it has some handgun segments where you're kind of just on rails. But always fun, from what I remember. Always fun. So Jet Li's Rise to Honor, that needs to come back. It's a game that I think was fun, deserves to be recognized as a game that actually existed, and it was pretty fun. Not just one of the games of all time, a fun game from a time. Jet Li's Rise to Honor, bring it back. The next one, another game, is a franchise actually that unfortunately just vanished, and I think it was a good one. Another thing that if it came out now, especially in the era we're in, streaming and all that stuff, I genuinely believe this whole franchise could come back with just a modern collection or something, once again, max it out at a remaster and just be hey, here you go, here's this game. We have online co-op now because it wasn't really a thing back in the day when the games first came out, and we keep it nice and simple. The Hunter franchise. So Hunter the Reckoning, I believe is the full title. The one that I had was the PS2 game, which I think was the second one. I think the first Hunter the Reckoning game was an Xbox game, and then Hunter the Reckoning Wayward is the one that I had, and that was on PS2. I don't remember if that one was exclusive to PS2 or not, but it was on PS2, and then I think there's only 3, and the third one, oddly enough, went back to Xbox only because it was Hunter the Reckoning Redemption, and I remember that, and I never ended up, having that game. But Hunter the Reckoning Wayward is a game, a full-on franchise that should definitely, just like Resident Evil, where it's hey, people like this, you should just bring it back. Modern port, like I said, if you want, give it just a little boost of a remaster, and we'll keep it nice and simple. Just bring it out. That's all you got to do. Just be hey, here you go. Here's a classic PS2 game that, in all honesty, like I said, should be in a collection and not just one of the games, especially because it's a co-op multiplayer game. It's also, and this is, I guess I should explain it, because the franchise has not even been referenced. I don't know who made the franchise. I don't remember. It died on, in the PS2 Xbox era. We got 3 games, possibly 4. There may have been a 4th one that I can't remember. But it's just out there in the ether. Hunter the Reckoning is a horror co-op game. It's, what do they call it? The isometric view, where it's it's not top down, but it's kind of a 3/4 angle sort of situation, and it's multiple characters, and you're just fighting demons and stuff, and it's just, some apocalyptic thing is happening, and there's just these people that hunt supernatural stuff, and you can pick your character, and they all have different abilities, and it's 4 different classes and stuff, and it's just a good time. And also scary depending on the level, because there's a prison level I'll never forget that scared the crap out of me as a kid. You just go to a prison, it's legit just pitch black. You got your flashlight, you can't see anything, and there's just demons all over the effing place. That scared me as a kid, but it's great. It has actual horror elements to it, but it's really an action game. It's really fun. So the Hunter the Reckoning franchise needs to come back. I genuinely believe, especially like I said, if they added online co-op, that game would do gangbusters, especially if it was an actual collection, not just hey, it's the first game. Just do all 3 of them. At this point, just do all 3 games and just be hey, here you go. problem solved. So I think the Hunter the Reckoning franchise definitely needs to come back. So, that's one, like I said, forgotten, gone but not forgotten, but definitely forgotten by a lot of people. It's not 100% forgotten, but a lot of people don't know about it. So Hunter the Reckoning definitely needs to come back. And I got a couple more. So what I'm gonna do, since I actually just made it to work, I'm gonna just make this a long one. All right, everybody, so I am back now in the car. It is a totally different day because I did not record after I left work. I just left work. So, kicking things off, it was actually a really good break because where we're at now is the PS3 era. And the first game I have is Infamous. Like, we need like a modern port. That, of course, is along the lines of, hey, give us a remaster. Of course, if it were possible, give us a remake. Once again, and I mentioned this before, somewhere where I've mentioned, Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yote. It might be a minute. I think all of their focus is on that game and that franchise right now. I assume there's going to be a third game, and who knows, maybe in between a second and third game, they'll, do something where it's like, hey, let's splinter off like a piece of the team to do Infamous. But I don't know. So we'll have to see what happens with that. That's definitely one of those ones where it's like, hey, make Infamous playable again. Like, bring that back. Bring back all the DLC and I forgot what it was. It was like vampires and stuff for the second game, and this includes Infamous. Last Light. What is the name? I can't remember. The Second Son. That's the name of the third one. I really could not remember. And I think First Light is the name of the DLC for that game. So bring all that stuff back. I never played the DLC for either game, honestly, for 2 or 3, because I didn't end up buying the vampire DLC for the second game, and I just never ended up buying the DLC for the third game either. And I just never ended up playing. I think when it was on like PS Plus, it was like right after I stopped doing it. And then they were like, hey, we're putting out the DLC. And I was like, man, all this effing time. And everyone says that game is like, the DLC is like better than the main game, really. But I've just never played it myself. I just never wanted to really buy it. And it was definitely one of those things where I was like, that would have been cool to get that for free. But I don't know, timing. But Infamous, of course, people want an Infamous remake. But like I said, this is at most a very nice remaster. I think could work. They did it. They had the collection on PS3 by the time the PS3 was kind of coming to an end. We had 1 and 2 plus the DLC, and that was when everything was getting a collection. That was the God of War collections, DMC collection. Like that might be a video in itself to just talk about all the collections. I may have done that actually, because I know I mentioned that before, where it was like the PS3 era, like every era has been the remake era for PlayStation. It just seems like, because The Last of Us Part 2 has come out like 15 times, it feels like it's just a big thing now, but it's like PlayStation has been on the remake, at least the remaster train since the PS3. Like they started as soon as they could. They were like, remaster, full collections, all that stuff, which I love. I thought it was a great idea. I wish we had more giant collections. Like, we know Nintendo's not doing that stuff. They're like, hey, here's a small collection of 3 games for a limited time only. It's like weird stuff like that. Like, once again, free money. Modern ports and these like simple remasters, they could be making more money, but it's odd the decisions that they make where it's like, this is really popular, just throw it out there. But Infamous is definitely the one. And then right after Infamous is one that might happen. I don't know what it's going to look like. I think it's going to happen. We've been talking about it for a minute now. And it's Metal Gear Solid 4. With the collection coming out, and then especially now, with Delta coming out, it's an interesting time where it's like, there's a lot of, old Metal Gear coming in. Full-on remakes of Metal Gears are coming in. Well, not that we haven't had that before with the first game. But it's a different time now. And it'll be interesting. Everybody's asking for like, hey, I know it, we got like the whole iPod thing with the actual license and all that stuff. There's a way for it to be done. I mean, in all honesty, I don't see why it couldn't easily jump over to, PS5. I think it has way more to do with like the licensing stuff than it would, and plus the fact that they do actually reference like, hey, you're using the PlayStation 3 and, but it's an old game. Like, that's fine. Like, just leave that in there. Nobody's going to lose their mind like, oh my God, they didn't update it to say PlayStation 5. Although, it would be hilarious if they did, but Kojima's not really with them anymore, because I was going to say that would be a total Kojima thing to do, to actually update it to say PS5 just because they ported it over. But he's not with them, and I don't know if they would care to even bother changing stuff like that, which they do not have to because no one really cares. But I think it has way more to do with just how integrated that console was with the PS3 and really the iPod stuff way more than anything else. That I think is going to be the weirdest part because it's like you have to go, they would actually have to go in and change some stuff. So I personally feel like that's what it's always been. It's just like, how do we take all of these very specific things out? And it just takes time because it's for a game that's 8 years long. Like if it was a shorter game, I think they'd be able to like go through and be like, okay, this is where this thing pops up and says iPod, and all the different little spots where they either reference it through audio or through text. Because I'm sure they say iPod at least once. So they have to. They might just say MP3 player, which would save some time. But for sure, like it's a lot of text to go through and stuff. And also, I think now is the part where, Konami kind of cares with things happening and, collections plus remakes. I think we might be getting closer and closer to the era of Konami being like, you know what? We do like money. We should have been putting, Metal Gear Solid 3 in HD for effing years instead of keeping it on slot machines. They finally figured that part out. Maybe they're actually working on MGS4 getting a modern port. One can only hope. So we'll see what happens with that. Right underneath that is another game that I consider to be very tied into the PlayStation 3. Whole franchise even. And that's Resistance. If you hadn't heard the news, there was word, from the former head of Insomniac. I'm pretty sure he's the former head of Insomniac, Ted Price, if I remember his name correctly. He mentioned that it was like, yeah, we kind of talked about a Resistance 4, and then it just didn't happen. So I don't think we're ever getting a Resistance 4, and that's very sad because the third game did not end the story, which really upset me because I was like, oh, I was expecting a trilogy and we're done here. And it was like, nope, it just keeps on keeping on. I was like, oh, that's not the end of the story. That's crazy because now I feel crazy. Like it ends. It has an ending, but it's not like the end of the Aliens. So we're just kind of left out there wanting a really cool game with, against aliens. I guess if they did it this time, it would have to be like the 60s, possibly even the 70s. Because the last one was in the 50s. It's been so long, they might as well jump, do like an in-between thing or something. Maybe do both, who knows? But do it at all would be nice, but I don't think it'll happen, sadly. But Resistance getting a modern port would be more useful for 2 and 3. Honestly, the first game is so effing ugly, it looks like a PS2 game. I remember the first time I played that because I didn't play Resistance 1 until I had a PS3 Slim. And I remember playing that game and being like, oh, this is ugly. Like, I remember thinking that, this looks like a PS2 game. That game looked ugly. It is crazy the way that we figure things out, and you can really see it. It's been a big talk, the generational leap isn't as much of a leap anymore. The PlayStation 3, I feel, was the last time that really, really happened like crazy. Because I felt like even the PS4 started off really good. Some games, of course, we always will have better games towards the end. You can't deny the fact that Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us look better than some games that came out in the beginning. But I don't think the leap was nearly as big as it was with PS3, where it was play Resistance 1 and then play Resistance 3. It is a world apart. It's absolutely insane. But that's the last one on my list. That's the last one on my list of games that I think need modern ports. There are definitely other games. There are, obscure games. God Hand. I did not reference God Hand. I forgot to put that on there. I haven't played God Hand, and I don't even know if you can get that. Actually, I should probably look that up on the PlayStation Classics thing, but I'm pretty sure it's not there because I feel like as much as I talk about Bayonetta, I think I would have heard if God Hand was on PS1. But I do actually need to check that out. So shout out to God Hand. Also shout out to the Warriors. That does have a modern port. I feel like I always have to reference the Warriors. It's kind of like Resident Evil. It's technically we got modern ports. You can go on the PSN store, but I do have to reference the Warriors because I really do want an actual remaster and remake of that game. Rockstar won't do it, but my God, if they did, it would be the coolest thing ever. But shout out to God Hand. I do want to play that game someday, and it's the situation that it's in. But I'm gonna check that one out. I don't think it's on PSN, but I hope I'm wrong with that. But shout out to God Hand. The God Hand is a final reference. But that is my list of games that I really believe deserve to have some modern ports. I would love to know yours if you guys have any, which I'm sure you do. There's something out there that we all like where it's man, Why can't I have this? I'm not like the biggest Nintendo guy or even, Xbox guy. So I'm sure there are tons of games that they have as well, where it's like, hey, where are the modern ports to this sort of thing? Like, where are all these games at? I mean, obviously, there's tons of stuff, and we'll see what happens. They have their GameCube online thing. They haven't even done Melee yet, as far as as of this recording. But also, because I'm doing the second part, the Kirby Air Riders thing is today. That's super random, and I'm putting this out, months. Who knows how many weeks later after this happens? But I found it out yesterday. I was like, oh, there's a Nintendo Direct, and then I was online, and then I realized it's specifically a Kirby Air Riders Direct, and I was like, oh, that game is definitely coming out this year. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. It'll be interesting to see like a full Direct, and then they're like, yeah, it comes out next year. That'll be interesting. But I think that game's actually coming out at the end of this year, which is very cool. I don't have a Switch 2, so it doesn't matter, but it's just cool. And Kirby, has a new Air Riders game coming out, and I'm very upset that I don't have a Switch 2 solely because of that DLC coming out. Because Kirby, what was it, Forgotten Lands? That game was effing amazing. That was like my first real Kirby game, because I was like, oh, they went 3D? I'm buying it, and I love that game. It was so fun. So really sucks that DLC is stuck on the Switch 2, but eventually I'm sure I'll get that. Anyway, shout out to Godhand, shout out to all these games that don't have modern ports. Like I said, if you guys have any, please put them in the comment section. Let people know about the games that are out there that they should at least be looking into if they can't really pick them up. Just let them know what games they should be going back to or finding in, other mysterious internet-based ways, if possible. I'm just saying some things are out there like Madworld and No More Heroes on emulators, but that is neither here nor there. I want to know what games you guys believe deserve to have some modern ports, whether it's just giving us the original game just to actually play it, remasters, remakes, even if you want them, just put all that stuff in there. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.